If it's true that Robert got a percentage less than 60%, he gets an F. Otherwise, quote, quote, we'll leave it blank. So you're either going to get an F or you're not going to get an F. And the way that we're representing not getting an F is to simply put two quotation marks next to each other, which means blank. Okay, so I click OK. Notice that the A is selected, or the A is displayed rather, and the F is not displayed because Robert's percent is 90%. Let me mess around with his score a little bit. So I'll put a 0 over here for quiz 5, that's 76%. Let me put a 0 over here for quiz 4, that's a 57%. That's below 60. So now notice what happens. The F flag appears, and then since this is the concatenation, as you can see here, this is the concatenation of all these cells, or in other words, the combination of all these cells. Well, what happens when you combine blank, 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 and then finally F? Well, the result is F. And so that's why that appears here. Okay, so now we have the equations for A, we have the equation for B. Now here comes the tough part, B, C, and D. Now, the reason why it's a little bit more tricky is because B really is two different possibilities. B will be given to a student if the person's percent is greater than or equal to 80, and, did you hear that word? And if it's less than 90. So, two things have to be tested here for a B. Is the percent that the student earned greater than or equal to 80, and is it also less than 90? If that's true, we'll display a B here. Okay, so that is going to require the usage of the AND logical operator. So let me show you how that works out. First, let me click Insert Function. And of course, first of all, you selected B2, or I'm sorry, not B2, K2, right? This is column K2. So you select K2, then we'll click the Insert Function. And then over here, we're going to use the if state, or the if function. And then later on, I want to show you how we're going to incorporate the AND function as well. See, the AND function says it's going to check whether all the arguments, here's argument 1, here's argument 2, it's going to check to see if they're all true. If they're all true, then this whole thing is true. It would be as if I said, would you and you like to go out to lunch with me? Well, that's a different statement than would you or you'd like to go out to lunch with me. The usage of the word or and the usage of the word and mean two different things. The usage of the word and means both this and this have to be true for the whole thing to be true. Whereas with or, we could say this or this has to be true. And if one is true and one is false, the whole thing is true. So we're going to use the word and inside of our if statement. So here's how we'll do that. First, we'll select if. Click OK. So you're familiar with this already with the letter A and B. We've used the if function. And the statement is this. Type the word and then put a parentheses. All right. If Robert's percent, which is in H2, is greater than or equal to 80%, which is the same thing as 0.8, comma, and if Robert's percent, which again is in H2, is less than 90%, so I'm going to put a 0.9, close the parentheses. If that's true, give him a B. If that's false, leave the cell blank. All right, so notice what has happened here. I am asking a question. Is Robert's percent greater than or equal to 80%? And is it also less than 90? If both of those things are true, then I'll give the student a B. Otherwise, I'll leave it blank. So I'll click OK. And let's see what happens. So since the student got a 57, since Robert got a 57, yeah, he's not going to get a B, he's got an F. Let's see what happens if I give Robert an 80 over here. Well, that's 73%. That's not high enough. Let's see, let me give him a 50. Ah, look at this. He earns an 84.8%. That's why the B letter appears here, because I'm going to give him a B only if this is true and if this is true. Since his percent is greater than or equal to 80 and it's also less than 90, let's give him a B. Okay, let's do the same thing for this cell, L2. So we're going to click it, click Insert Function. We're going to select the if function. Now the logical test is two things. If Robert's percent is greater than or equal to 70%, and if it's less than 80%, then he gets a C. All right, so we'll type the word and. If Robert's percent is greater than or equal to 70%, comma, and if Robert's percent is less than 0.8, which is 80%, close parentheses. If that's true, you get a C. If that's false, leave it blank. So the usage of the AND statement here gives me some additional power. The power that it gives me is that I can determine, is this true, and is this true, and is this true? However many things I want to determine if they're true, because if they're all true, then we're going to do this. Otherwise, if it's false, we're going to do this. So I click OK. Let's see here. Let's change Robert's quiz scores to see if we can give him a 70-something. So let me try 44 here. Nope, that's not low enough here. How about a 44 over here? Perfect. He's got a 74.6%. That's why the letter C appears here. Why? Because this is only going to activate if his percentage is greater than or equal to 70%, and if it's less than 80%. If that's true, give him a C. Otherwise, leave it blank. All right, so we have one more cell to determine, which is this guy over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert a function, specifically the if function, and then we have to ask the question, is his percentage greater than or equal to 60, and is it less than 70? If that's true, give him a D. Otherwise, leave it blank. So since I use that word and in my evaluation, I have to type in the word and parentheses. If Robert's percent is greater than or equal to 0.6, comma, and if Robert's percent, which is in H2, if that's less than 0.7, then that means he got a D. Otherwise, quote, quote, we leave that cell blank. So I click OK, and now no matter what Robert's percentage is, either the A, B, C, D, or F cells will activate. For example, let's see here. Let me give Robert a 99 over here. Let me give Robert a 99 over here. So notice that he got an A, and the concatenation of all these cells is displayed over here. And let's see what happens if I give him a 50. Okay, that's an 86%. That's why the B came up. Let's see what happens if I give him a 50 over here. That's a 77%. So he's got a C. Give him a 50 over here. That's a 68%. So that's why we have a D. And let's see here. Let me give him a 50 over here. That's 59%. That's why he got an F. So now we have the equations to display A, B, C, D, or F. And then this cell concatenates or connects them all together, puts them all together. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select I2 all the way to N2, and I'm going to take the fill handle and apply them to the rest of the students. Well, now that I've applied them to the rest of the students, now we can see the appropriate grades for all of the students. So let's see, 85%, that's a B, 75, that's a C, 65, that's a D, 55, that's an F. And Robert, our star student, he's getting 95s for everything, right? So 95, tab 95, tab 95, tab 95, tab. He's got a 95, so that's why his grade is an A. Perfect. I don't want to see column J, K, L, M, N. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these columns by placing my mouse pointer over here, clicking, holding down, selecting all these columns. I'm going to right-click, and then I'm going to hide these columns. I'm not deleting them, I'm just hiding them. And now I can see the columns that I want to see, namely the quiz scores, the person's name, the total, percent, and the grade. Perfect. All right, notice as a result of hiding them, notice what has happened. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, O? Hey, that's not right. Well, that's because the cells in between here, or the columns in between here, are hidden. If you want to see them, just select I, select O, double-click right here, and then all those cells become visible. If you don't want to see them, which we do not, I'm going to reselect them, right-click, select hide. Another way to see those is if I selected I through O, and if I right-click and say unhide, it's going to unhide those columns as well. Okay, I'm going to Control Z because I really want those hidden. Now let's do this. Let's make our report card look pretty neat here. So I'm going to select A1 I should say, not I, A1 all the way to I6. Then I'm going to place a border around everything. So I'll select the Borders button, and I'll click this guy over here, All Borders. Good, so that places a border around everything. I want my top row to be black background, white font. So I'll select A1 through I1. And I'm going to make this thing a black background with a white font. So I use these two buttons over here, one for the background color, one for the font color. Now I'm going to make this bold, and yeah, that looks pretty good. I like that. Okay, another thing that I want to do is I want to make each one of these columns stand out. So I'm going to select G2 to G6, and I'll select a lighter background color, like maybe this green. I'll do the same thing with the percent. I'll select a lighter background color. Maybe this one will be the purple. And then for the grade, I'll select a lighter background color. Let's say this turquoise looking color. There we go, that looks good. Now I want to best fit all the columns. Maybe some of the columns are too wide, and maybe some of the rows are too tall. Well, I can best fit them by double-clicking one by one. For example, if I double-click in between A and B, that's going to best fit just column A. If I double-click in front of or in between B and C, it's going to best fit column B. I can do all of these columns, all of these rows at the same time by selecting this button over here, the Select All button. By clicking this, notice what happens. Every single row and every single column have been selected. Now if I double-click here, or here, or here, it doesn't matter. All of the columns will be best fit. And then if I double-click in between here, or here, or here, in between any of the rows, if I double-click, all of the rows will be best fit. Okay, good. So now I can unselect. As a result of best fitting, it looks like it revealed column J through N. I don't want those to be displayed, so I'll reselect those, right-click, and then we'll hide those columns. There we go. So that looks pretty good. Now, no matter what happens, as the teacher adds more and more students, all she has to do, he or she has to do, is enter the quiz scores, the percent, and the total will be determined automatically, and the grade will be determined. So let's say that we have a new student, okay, Stacy. And let's say that Stacy gets a 45 and a 90 and a 65 and a 75 and 99, say for example. Well, notice what happens. Microsoft Excel automatically populates these next cells, assuming that I want to know the total, percentage, and grade for my new student. And I can just keep on doing that. As I add new students, these three will automatically pop up. Next, let's go ahead and type in, instead of sheet, let me double click and type in grade sheet. Or perhaps I could right click, select rename, and I could also type in grade sheet. So those are two ways of changing this. You can either double click and type, or you can right click and then select rename. Another thing is I want to make this a different tab color, so I'll right click it, select tab color, and let's say that I want the red tab. So now if I unselect it, clearly you can see the red. If I select it, it has kind of like a gradient appearance to the grade sheet. I'm ready to save my work, so I'll click the File tab. I'll say Save As, and let's give this thing a name. It's going to save it inside of the Documents folder. That's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this thing as my grade sheet, and then I'll simply click Save. And now notice that the title changes to grade sheet because that's what I just saved this thing as. Okay, that's it. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. We'll see you next time.